looking for the people who are excluded by the usual process that comes when you're designing to the mean, or just the average population, that there really is no average. And when you start to look at who's excluded, you find ways that you can make your products better and have a much more empathetic view of who your users are and what they're trying to get done. So that's changing a lot, and that we're seeing in our own product development at Microsoft.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Nick Katsivelos, who's the Director of Digital Advisory Services with Microsoft. Nick, it's great to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your role as the Director of Digital Advisory Services at Microsoft and what you do in that role.
Yeah, it's an interesting role and something kind of new for Microsoft. I'm working with our lead customers globally and coming at them from the business side as opposed to the technology side, and looking for opportunities that they may have in entering the digital economy, transforming their businesses to adapt to the rapid rate of change that we're seeing and all the technology opportunities that are coming, but really looking at it from a business side. How do you reach out to your customers more effectively? How do you design new products and services? How do you improve workforce collaboration? And it's a challenge because most companies, traditional lines of businesses, are really feeling the squeeze right now, and they need help. We recommend that they partner with folks who have experience. Microsoft's gone through a tremendous transformation itself, and that's what we bring into our customers.
And do you find that in that capacity you're working more with industries outside of technology, or is it fairly balanced?
We're looking at everything, mostly outside of technology, and then in those companies, outside of the IT department. So going to the business side, I focus on media and entertainment for the most part. Being in New York, that's pretty convenient. So I work locally. Yeah, we're in pretty much every industry.
Nice. You started out with a degree in economics and anthropology. Yeah. How on earth did you pivot to technology, and how does that actually help inform some of the work that you do today?
Well, I made a few pivots there. Like for a long time, I was pre-med, but that didn't work out for me. And I found economics and anthropology, always interested in technology and science and change in the world, and systematic things. So economics or biology, really have a system behind them. And cultural anthropology was great too, because it gave me the tools to look at a situation and start to read it and be a better listener. You think for a while that's really not going to have an impact, and then suddenly, 30 years later, it really comes in and a big thing at Microsoft right now is inclusive design, and really trying to make sure that things all the way from AI to the way we design experiences and products are inclusive for people.
How do you think we are doing in terms of making, the web and technology more accessible? And I do mean that, for all people, not just select few.
Right. There's a lot going on in a lot of different areas. So the democratization of the technology, it's really inexpensive to get started now. So that's great. Even some of the high-end things like artificial intelligence now are within the grasp of anyone who wants to get started. And then in things like AI, where it's been the province mostly of scientists and math folks, now as these AI models and whatnot are being used in ways that have impact on real people, we have to really study those and understand them. So being able to take a look at that and make sure that what we're designing in AI from the ground up fundamentally is inclusive and aware of bias that can creep into any model. There's always bias, right? It's whether it's positive, negative, or at least understood and being addressed in the process.
Right, and how are you continually refining those algorithms as you go along? You wrote a blog post about how technology is only part of the solution. Mm-hmm. And you've even said that people can fail with the wrong tools. What did you mean by that? And how do you think we need to be thinking about that today?
I think that it may have been that the best people can fail with even the right tools. I mean, what it really comes down to is there's no silver bullet. I've seen teams that have gone off, expected that the technology was going to take care of itself, but change is never really, the technology is not the driving factor, it's people and how they interact with that technology. And in trying to bring change about in large organizations, there's so many factors that go into it. You know, what are the rewards systems? How is risk managed in a company? How do you get people to do something that's unfamiliar and take a risk, especially if you're in a high pressure business where, you know, people like to stick with the tried and true. For people who are very analytical, you know, when they say, show me 5 places where this has worked before, and it's like, well, we're right here at the frontier, you got to take some chances. All those things coming together are the things that are all people problems. And the technology won't even get into play until you get some of them solved.
I think one of the areas of technology that's causing the most anxiety for people is automation.
Mm-hmm.
How are you sort of navigating that, you know, that anxiety that a lot of people have inside, you know, especially more traditional businesses and things like that, to get them more comfortable with what, you know, the benefits are to automation and you know, how it can have a real you know, outsized impact for business?
Sure. I mean, I can look back almost 18 years now to a client I had where they had a lot of people who were doing mass mailings and by hand, you know, running a Rolodex, and I introduced them to mail merge. And it meant that perhaps, you know, 1 or 2 of the people wouldn't be needed because all that manual entry wasn't there. But the people who were working on the stuff suddenly found they had much more time to actually do higher order things, and they were freed from this you know, monotonous kind of work. If you give them a clear education path and a way to show how they can upskill to take advantage of this, I think that a lot of people, light bulbs go off and they find opportunity, and it sets them up for more opportunity in other places where they probably hadn't been looking before. So I think that's great, and I think that companies that are committing to that kind of change owe it to their employees to you know, offer that sort of education and growth path out of the past into the future.
Routine work, as you were saying earlier, is going to be replaced, whether that's routine cognitive work or routine manual work. But the creative work on both sides is still going to remain.
Right. I look at something like the way some of the artificial intelligence on things like image recognition works. Having to sort through a gazillion photographs to find the ones that have cars in them as a manual task, as a drag, and to be able to skip that step and get into the more interesting part means that you have more time to actually look at the relevant photographs and get in and do a better job. So, you know, technology and artificial intelligence, automation, all as enabling and empowering, but not necessarily replacing.
You know, I had to ask you about your Twitter handle, the @Family CTO. Tell us, you know, why you selected that one.
It came to me one Thanksgiving when I was there, and everyone just had problems for me. They all brought
You're sort of like the modern day doctor. Doc, my back is killing me.
Exactly. And as I looked at it, there's you know, enterprise, small, medium business, and then consumer. And there's no like super consumer. And no one's really guiding families of how to manage their IT stack and how to think about it in a forward-looking way. How do we take this tremendous IT stack that, you know, you've got at home and in your pocket and use it to set your family up for future success? And I have kids who are learning things on YouTube all by themselves, but there's also an alarming amount of devices that we've got. And so it was trying to start a movement of people to identify themselves as the family CTOs and work together to help come up with best practices and things that will really help families get that going and get the most out of it. If anyone's interested, I'm always interested in talking more about it. I think it's super important. I think it's been overlooked for too long.
Tell me a little bit about what you think about voice these days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's been an absolute explosion in the space. I think a lot of agencies are sort of grappling with how to brand in a voice space. You know, and then as you said, families are sort of beginning to bring these into the homes. They're being used in a bunch of different ways, from, you know, conversational commerce to helping little kids do their homework.
Yep.
How do you think about voice as you consult with various companies?
It's one of these things that's very enticing and seems like it should be everywhere. At the same time, it's pretty difficult to get done right. And this is one of those places where anthropology comes in. You really need to talk to people and observe them and see when they're willing to speak out and express themselves verbally, and when they'd rather just type it in or click it in or whatever it is. And you'd be surprised. A lot of people do not want to speak out loud. And so when you're building something, I think you need to be ready to address both modes of operation. You can't choose one or the other. There are other things of when everyone's using it at the same time, it can get really strange. The technology also has a little ways to go. It's still a little slow in response time. And if you look at e-commerce, you know, things where milliseconds matter in conversion rates, voice has challenges too, and you don't want to frustrate your consumers. So it's there. When it's appropriate, it's fantastic. It's going to keep getting better, but it's not the be-all, end-all replacement.
Mm-hmm. Nick, one of the questions we love to ask is a book that you'd like to recommend to our viewers?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you a few things. So from Microsoft, there's a ton of blogs and whatnot, but I would also say the inclusive design stuff that's at the Microsoft Design blog is great. In New York, the New York City Media Lab has two fantastic newsletters. One that's mostly focused on AI is available at the New York City Media Lab. And then at the new R Lab, which is an AR/VR lab, they have another great newsletter on AR/VR and future interfaces. That's fantastic stuff. And then at Columbia, David Rogers' Digital Transformation Playbook is awesome. Coming out of MIT, the work of Marshall Van Alstyne, Jeff Parker, so Platform Revolutions is really fantastic. I highly recommend it. At NYU, I'm teaching right now at the Integrated Digital Media Program, which operates at the nexus of culture, society, and technology. And there's so much research and great work coming out of there, so it's another place to look. And if you just keep an eye on those few things, that'll keep you busy for a long time.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Nick.
Great, thank you.
That was Nick Katsivelos, Director of Digital Advisory Services with Microsoft.